It's strange how life can blindside you. You go through your days thinking you've built something unshakable, something permanent. Then, in a matter of minutes, it's all ripped away, leaving you standing there wondering if any of it was real. That's exactly how I felt 2 weeks ago. 30 years of marriage with Sarah, the woman I thought I knew better than anyone. Ours was a love built on steady ground. No wild storms, no dramatic highs and lows. Just the kind of bond you'd bet your life on. Or so I thought. Recently, things had changed. At first, I thought it was for the better. Sarah had started acting different, softer, more loving. The kind of attentive I hadn't seen in years. She greeted me at the door every evening, dressed to kill, wearing the perfume I bought her on our 5th anniversary. She'd laugh at my old jokes like I was some kind of comedian. And the nights? Let's just say they were more than I dared to hope for after 30 years of marriage. For 2 weeks, I felt like I'd been given a second chance, a second honeymoon with the woman I adored. I found myself waking up earlier just to catch her before she started her day, calling her during lunch, and planning little surprises for her like I did when we were first married. I felt alive again. Tonight, I was going all out. I left work early, grinning like a fool as I stopped by the florist for 24 roses, picked up her favorite chocolate-covered cherries, and grabbed a bottle of wine she loved. But the crown jewel was the cruise tickets, a week-long getaway for just the two of us. No distractions, just us and the open sea. I couldn't wait to see her face when I told her. I practically skipped up the steps to the kitchen, pushing open the door with my arms full of gifts. "Sarah," I called out, my voice echoing through the house. But it wasn't Sarah who answered. It was my daughter, Linda. She was sitting at the kitchen table, her fingers wrapped tightly around a steaming mug. She looked up at me, and there was something in her expression that stopped me in my tracks. "Dad," she said, her voice quieter than usual. "Hey, Linda," I replied, my excitement faltering for a moment. "What are you doing here? Where's your mom?" Linda hesitated, her eyes darting to the floor. "We need to talk." I frowned, setting the roses down on the counter. "Talk about what? What's going on?" She looked at me, her face pale and her eyes glassy. "Dad, Mom's not here right now." "What do you mean she's not here?" My voice hardened instinctively. "She's on a date," Linda blurted, the words tumbling out in a rush. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard her. "A date?" I repeated, my voice cutting through the air like a whip. "It's not what you think," Linda stammered, standing up, her mug trembling in her hands. "She just needed something different. She loves you, Dad. She really does. But—" "Stop." I held up a hand, cutting her off. "Say it again, slowly. Where is your mother?" Linda flinched, her voice dropping to a whisper. "She's out with another man. But it's just one time, Dad. She'll be back tomorrow, and—" "Out with another man?" I repeated, my voice rising. "And you knew about this? You helped her do this? Dad, please. Answer me, Linda." I roared, slamming my hand down on the counter. The sound reverberated through the kitchen. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she stumbled backward. She wasn't happy. She needed something more. I thought you'd understand. She loves you, Dad. Understand." I took a step toward her, my chest tight with rage. "You knew she was doing this, and you kept it from me? You let her humiliate me like this? You call that love?" "Dad, please, it's not like that." "Then explain it to me," I snapped. "Explain how my wife, the woman I've loved for 3 decades, is out screwing some stranger while I'm here buying her roses and planning a goddamn cruise to celebrate our life together." Linda burst into tears, covering her face with her hands. I didn't know it would go this far. She told me it was just about feeling alive again, about being desirable. She said she'd come back to you, and everything would be fine. "Fine?" I barked. My voice was so loud, I didn't recognize it. She removed her wedding rings and walked out that door. "There's no coming back from that, Linda." I turned away, my mind racing. The gifts I'd bought now seemed like a cruel joke. The woman I thought I knew had betrayed me in the most humiliating way imaginable, and my daughter had played a part in it. I gripped the edge of the counter, my knuckles white. "You need to leave, Linda. Now. Dad, get out," I shouted, spinning around to face her. "And tell your mother when she gets home." She better pray she has a damn good explanation. Linda hesitated, her tear-streaked face pleading with me to soften, to understand. But there was no softness left in me. Not now. As she left, the door clicking shut behind her, I stood in the silence of the kitchen. My chest heaved with the weight of everything she'd just told me. Sarah wasn't the woman I thought she was. And when she walked through that door, I'd make damn sure she knew I wasn't the man to forgive her. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the empty space where Linda had been just moments ago. The silence of the house felt oppressive, suffocating, as though the walls themselves were closing in on me. My chest heaved with each breath, my mind scrambling to make sense of what I'd just heard. Sarah, my wife of 30 years, was out on a date with another man. And Linda, my own daughter, had not only known about it but had encouraged it. The bouquet of roses I'd carefully chosen that afternoon sat on the counter, now looking ridiculous. The chocolates, the wine, the cruise tickets. They were all part of a plan to show my wife how much I loved her. And she was out there with another man. My phone buzzed on the counter, jolting me out of my thoughts. It was Linda again. I grabbed it, more out of reflex than any desire to hear what she had to say. What? I growled into the phone. Dad, please don't hang up, she said quickly, her voice thick with tears. I need to explain. You said plenty, I snapped. You stood there and told me my wife, your mother, is screwing another man. What else could you possibly have to say? It's not like that, she pleaded. It's not what you think. Not what I think. My voice rose sharply. She's out with another man, Linda. She took off her wedding rings, lied to my face, and walked out that door. What exactly am I misunderstanding? Mom loves you, Linda said, her voice cracking. She needed something else. She said things have been different lately, that she hasn't felt. Stop, I interrupted, my hand gripping the edge of the counter. Don't you dare try to justify this. Don't you dare tell me she did this because of me. Dad, please. No, I snapped, cutting her off. You knew about this, Linda. You knew, and you didn't tell me. Hell, you helped her. Do you have any idea what that makes you? There was silence on the other end of the line, broken only by the sound of Linda's shaky breathing. Answer me, I demanded. I didn't know what else to do, she finally burst out. Mom was so unhappy, and she kept saying how things between you two had gotten stale. She said she needed to feel wanted again, to feel alive. I thought. You thought what? I snarled. That I'd just accept this? That I'd be okay with my wife screwing another man because she needed to feel alive? Mom said it wasn't about love, Linda said quickly, as though that would make it better. She said it was just one night. She didn't want to hurt you, Dad. She just what? I spat, pacing the kitchen now. She didn't want to hurt me? Do you even hear yourself? How the hell do you think this feels, Linda? She said you'd understand, Linda said, her voice breaking again. She said you'd forgive her because you love her. Something inside me snapped. Understand? I barked. You think I'll forgive her for this? You think I'll ever forget that the two of you decided it was okay to humiliate me like this? Dad, it's not like that. Linda cried. Mom's been telling me all week how much she loves you. She said these last 2 weeks were the happiest she's been in years. The happiest she's been? I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. You know why she's been happy, Linda? Because she's been living a goddamn lie. Because she got to play the perfect wife while planning her little rendezvous. She's not leaving you, Dad, Linda said desperately. She told me that. She said this was just about her. It doesn't change how much she loves you. I stopped pacing and turned to face the phone like I could see her through it. It doesn't change anything? You think there's a normal after this? You think I can look at her, at you, and forget that you both betrayed me? Dad, please, you don't mean that. I don't have a wife, I said coldly. And as of right now, I don't have a daughter. Dad, don't say that. Please don't say that, Linda screamed, her voice cracking under the weight of her sobs. Goodbye, Linda, I said, ending the call before she could say another word. The phone fell from my hand and clattered onto the counter. The house was silent again, but my head was a storm of noise. My hands shook as I grabbed the bottle of wine and poured myself a glass, downing it in one gulp. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, each second dragging on for what felt like an eternity. I grabbed my phone again and scrolled to Sarah's number. I hit call. It rang once, twice, 3 times, straight to voicemail. I left a message, my voice tight with barely restrained fury. Sarah, it's me. Call me back. Now. Then I sent a text. You need to come home. We need to talk. Now. By midnight, there was still no response. The anger bubbling inside me was starting to boil over. I couldn't just sit there anymore. I grabbed my keys and stormed out to the car. I didn't know where I was going. Maybe I'd drive to every damn restaurant in town until I found her. Maybe I'd find the bastard she was with and make him regret ever laying eyes on my wife. But as I gripped the steering wheel, staring out into the darkness of the driveway, a bitter truth settled over me like a weight I couldn't shake. She wasn't coming home. Not tonight. I turned off the engine and sat there, the silence of the night pressing in around me. My hands tightened on the wheel, the leather creaking under the pressure. When she walked through that door, I'd be waiting, and she was going to answer for every goddamn second of this betrayal. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Sarah's face. But it wasn't the face I knew. It wasn't the loving wife I had built a life with. It was someone else. Someone cold, deceitful, and unrecognizable. By 5 a.m., I gave up trying to rest. I sat in the living room, nursing a drink I didn't even want. My thoughts churned like a storm, alternating between anger, betrayal, and the faint, pathetic hope that this was all some misunderstanding. Then I heard it, tires on the gravel driveway. My pulse quickened as headlights lit up the curtains. The engine shut off, and there was silence before the faint sound of a car door opening. She was home. I set the glass down carefully on the table, the soft clink breaking the silence. My hands clenched in a fist as I waited, every muscle in my body taut. The door unlocked, and Sarah stepped inside, her silhouette outlined by the porch light. She froze when she saw me sitting there in the semi-darkness. "James," she said softly, like a child caught sneaking in past curfew. I didn't say anything. I just stared at her, my face as unreadable as stone. She stepped forward cautiously, closing the door behind her. "I didn't think you'd still be up," she murmured, setting her purse on the counter. "You didn't think I'd be up?" I said, my voice low and cold. "You thought I'd just go to bed while my wife was out screwing another man?" Her head snapped up, her face draining of color. "James, it's not." "Don't lie to me," I snapped, standing abruptly. My chair scraped against the floor, the sound sharp in the quiet room. "I know everything. Linda told me." Her eyes widened, and she stepped back as if I'd struck her. She told you?" "Yes," I said, my voice hard and unforgiving. "She told me how you lied to me, how you planned this, how you spent the last 2 weeks pretending to love me while you were really just trying to ease your guilt." "James, please," she said, her voice breaking. "It's not what you think." Then tell me what it is, Sarah." I roared, taking a step toward her. "Tell me how you thought this was okay. Tell me how you thought I'd be fine with you betraying me like this." Tears welled up in her eyes, and she began to shake. "I wasn't thinking," she whispered. I didn't mean to hurt you." "You didn't mean to hurt me?" I laughed bitterly, the sound sharp and hollow. "You took off your wedding ring, Sarah. You looked me in the eye, kissed me, made love to me, and then you walked out that door to be with another man. How the hell is that not meant to hurt me?" She flinched, her tears spilling over. "It wasn't about love," she said desperately. "It was just, I needed to feel something again. I needed to feel alive." "Alive?" I repeated, my voice rising. "You needed to feel alive. So you threw away 30 years of marriage? You threw me away?" "I didn't throw you away," she cried. "James, I love you." "You do." "No, you don't," I said firmly, my voice steady. "You don't love me. If you did, you never would have done this. Don't insult me by pretending otherwise." "I didn't know what else to do," she sobbed. "I wasn't trying to hurt you, James. I felt so empty, so unwanted. I thought this would help." "You thought this would help?" I snapped, my anger boiling over. "Do you have any idea what you've done? You lied to me, you humiliated me, and you dragged our daughter into it. You've destroyed everything, Sarah. Everything." "I didn't mean to," she whispered, her voice barely audible. But you did, I said coldly. And now you have to live with it. She sank to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. Please, James, don't do this. Don't throw us away. We can fix this. I know we can. We? I said, laughing bitterly. There is no we anymore, Sarah. You made sure of that the second you walked out that door. I'll do anything, she begged, looking up at me with tear-streaked cheeks. Counseling, therapy, whatever it takes. Just don't give up on us. It's too late, I said, my voice cold and final. You gave up on us the moment you decided I wasn't enough for you. I turned away, heading for the stairs. Pack your things, I said over my shoulder. I don't want to see you when I wake up. Her sobs followed me up the stairs, echoing in the empty house. I slammed the bedroom door behind me and leaned against it, my chest heaving. I thought the anger would feel satisfying, but it didn't. It felt hollow, empty, just like everything else. The morning was cold and quiet, a stark contrast to the inferno of anger still burning inside me. The chair I sat in felt like it was holding me hostage, tethering me to the memories of the life Sarah and I had built. One she'd set ablaze with her lies and betrayal. She had left an hour ago, her head down, her voice barely a whisper as she said, I'll give you some space. Space. That's what she called this wasteland she'd turned my life into. But this wasn't just space. This was a war zone, and I wasn't going to sit here like a casualty. I pushed back the chair, the screech of wood against the floor sharp in the silence. If Sarah thought she could destroy our life without consequences, she was about to learn what consequences really meant. I went upstairs to our bedroom, the room we'd shared for 30 years, where we'd whispered dreams and shared laughter. The room that now felt like a crime scene. I opened the closet and started pulling her clothes off the hangers. One by one, they hit the floor in a colorful heap. Dresses she wore to work, sweaters she'd curl up in on lazy Sundays, even the expensive lingerie she hadn't touched in years. I moved to the drawers next, pulling them open and dumping their contents onto the pile. Socks, scarves, jewelry, all of it. I didn't care what it was. If it was hers, it was going. At the back of the closet, I found her wedding dress, sealed neatly in a garment bag. I pulled it out, my hands trembling as I stared at the fabric. This dress had meant everything once. It had been a symbol of our love, our promises to each other. Now, it was nothing more than a cruel reminder of the vows she'd shattered. I threw it onto the pile without a second thought. The rest of the house followed. I tore through the rooms like a man possessed, gathering everything that was hers. Photo albums, her sketchbooks, the scented candles she insisted on buying, even the throw pillows she loved so much. By the time I was done, the pile in the living room looked like the aftermath of a hurricane. But I wasn't done. Not yet. I grabbed the gas can from the garage, the weight of it solid and heavy in my hand. It was half full, more than enough for what I had planned. The studio was Sarah's sanctuary, the place she spent hours painting and sculpting, pouring her soul into every brushstroke. I unlocked the door and stepped inside, the smell of paint and varnish hitting me like a wall. Her artwork lined the walls, pieces she'd spent years creating. They were beautiful, vibrant, full of life, just like the lies she'd told me. I worked quickly, splashing gasoline onto everything. The floor, the furniture, the paintings, and the pile of her belongings I'd dumped in the center of the room. The fumes were sharp and overwhelming, but I didn't care. When I was done, I stepped back and pulled a box of matches from my pocket. I struck one, the tiny flame flickering in the dim light. This is for 30 years, I muttered. Then I let the match fall. The fire roared to life, the heat forcing me to step back as flames licked up the walls and consumed everything in their path. I stood there for a moment, watching it all burn. The heat, the smell, the crackling of destruction. It should have felt satisfying. It didn't. It just felt empty. The fire spread faster than I'd expected, climbing the walls and spilling out through the windows. As I turned to walk back to the house, I glanced over my shoulder. The studio was engulfed now, the flames licking hungrily at the edges of the roof. I didn't stop to watch it collapse. I had other things to do. Back in the house, I sat at my desk, and opened my laptop. If Sarah thought she could walk away from this unscathed, she was about to learn just how wrong she was. I started with the bank accounts, logging into our shared accounts, and transferring every dollar to my personal one. Then I canceled the credit cards, one by one. I made sure to lock her out of everything. Our utilities, our mortgage account, even the grocery delivery app she loved so much. It wasn't enough to just hurt her. I wanted her to feel the weight of her choices. When I was done, I picked up the phone and called my lawyer. "James," he said groggily, "it's barely 6 a.m. This better be good." "It's not good," I replied, my voice sharp. "I need to start divorce proceedings. Today." That woke him up. "All right," he said, his tone suddenly serious. "What happened?" "She cheated," I said bluntly. "Last night. I want everything locked down, bank accounts, property, all of it. I want her out of my life as fast as possible." There was a pause on the other end. "Do you have proof?" "She admitted it," I said, "and her daughter confirmed it. That's all the proof I need." "All right," he said. "I'll get the paperwork started. But James, you might want to take some time to cool off before making any big decisions." I hung up without answering. Cool off? How the hell was I supposed to cool off when everything I'd spent 30 years building had just gone up in flames? I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. My hands were still shaking, my chest tight with anger and grief. But this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Sarah had taken everything from me. Now it was my turn. The next morning, I stood in the middle of the living room, staring at the pile of Sarah's belongings I'd gathered. The house was eerily quiet, except for the faint sound of the wind rattling the windows. Outside, the ash from the burned studio was still settling, like a metaphor for the ruins of my marriage. I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. My phone buzzed on the counter. For a brief moment, I wondered if it was Sarah trying to reach me. But it wasn't her. It was Linda. I hesitated, debating whether to answer, but I knew I needed to finish what I'd started. "What do you want?" I answered curtly. "Dad, I'm at the house. Are you okay?" Linda's voice was shaky, like she'd been crying. "You've got some nerve coming here," I said, my voice cold. "Dad, please," she begged. I didn't know what else to do. "I thought." "You thought what?" I interrupted. "That I'd just accept this? That I'd forgive you and your mother for what you've done to me?" "I thought," her voice cracked. "I thought I was helping. Mom was so unhappy, and she didn't know how to talk to you. I didn't want her to feel that way anymore." I gritted my teeth, the anger bubbling up again. "So, your solution was to help her cheat on me? To keep her secrets and lie to my face? You call that helping?" "Dad, please," she sobbed. "I made a mistake. I know that now. But I can't lose you. You're my dad. I love you." "Don't," I snapped, cutting her off. "Don't you dare talk about love. You wouldn't know the first thing about it if you thought what you did was love." "Dad, I'm sorry," she pleaded. "I'll do anything to make this right." "There's nothing to make right," I said flatly. "You and your mother made your choices, and now you have to live with them." I hung up, tossing the phone onto the counter. The rage still simmered in my chest, but I couldn't let it consume me. I needed to stay focused. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. There was still one person who hadn't felt the consequences of this betrayal yet. The drive to Mark's house felt like it took an eternity. My grip on the steering wheel was tight, my knuckles white as I fought to keep my anger in check. By the time I pulled into his driveway, I was practically shaking. His car was parked outside, and the lights in the living room were on. I could see him through the window, lounging on the couch like he didn't have a care in the world. I didn't bother knocking. I pounded on the door until it flew open, and there he was, standing in the entryway with a confused look on his face. "Can I help you?" he asked, his brow furrowing. "You're Mark, right?" I said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "Yeah. Who are you?" "I'm Sarah's husband," I said, my voice sharp. His face went pale, and he took a step back. "Look, I didn't know." "Save it," I snapped, cutting him off. "You knew exactly what you were doing. You knew she was married, and you didn't care." "I thought she said," he trailed off, his eyes darting around the room like he was looking for an escape. I didn't let him finish. My fist connected with his jaw, sending him stumbling back into the coffee table. He tried to scramble to his feet, but I was on him, landing blow after blow until he was lying on the floor, groaning in pain. By the time I was done, his face was a bloody mess, and he could barely move. I stood over him, breathing hard, my fists aching from the impact. "If you ever go near my wife again, I'll make sure this is the least of your problems," I said coldly. He didn't respond, just lay there clutching his ribs as I turned and walked out. When Sarah finally called me later that day, her voice was frantic. "James, what the hell is going on?" she demanded. "Why are the accounts locked? Why can't I access anything?" "Figure it out," I said coldly. "James, please," she begged. "I'm sorry. I know I hurt you, but we can fix this. Just let me come home, and we'll talk." "There's nothing to talk about," I said. "We're done." "James, please," she sobbed. "I made a mistake. I know that. But I love you. You have to believe that." "I don't have to believe anything," I snapped. "You made your choice, Sarah. Now you get to live with it." I hung up, blocking her number. Over the next few days, the fallout of her actions began to sink in for Sarah. With the accounts frozen and her access to the house cut off, she was left scrambling to figure out her next move. She called me repeatedly, but I ignored every message. The studio, the money, the marriage, everything she'd relied on was gone. And it was all her fault. I wasn't done yet. While Sarah was busy picking up the pieces of her shattered life, I was finalizing my plans to leave her and everything we'd built behind. I met with my lawyer again, signing the final paperwork for the divorce and ensuring every detail was airtight. Sarah would get the bare minimum, just enough to keep her out of my life for good. I sold the house within a week, packing up only what I needed and leaving the rest behind. It wasn't easy, walking away from 30 years of memories, but it was necessary. There was nothing left for me here. No family, no love, no future. But I wasn't broken. I was starting over. It had been a week since Sarah walked out of the house with her hastily packed bag, tears streaming down her face. I cut off all communication, blocked her number, filed the divorce papers, and frozen every joint account. My lawyer assured me everything was moving swiftly, and Sarah would soon receive the official notice. But I should have known she wouldn't go quietly. It started with an unexpected knock at the door. I opened it to find 2 police officers standing on the porch, their expressions unreadable. "James Harris?" one of them asked. "Yes," I said warily, my grip tightening on the doorframe. "We need to ask you a few questions about the fire at your property last week," the officer said, pulling out a notepad. "The fire? Of course." "Sure," I said, keeping my voice calm. "What about it?" "We've received a report suggesting it might not have been an accident," the officer said, his eyes narrowing slightly. I felt my jaw tighten. "A report from who?" "I'm not at liberty to say," he replied, his tone professional. "But I already knew." "Sarah." I crossed my arms, leaning casually against the doorframe. "That was my studio," I said firmly. "I own the property outright. If you're suggesting I set fire to my own building, I'd love to hear why that would even be illegal." The officers exchanged a glance. "We're just following up on a complaint," the other one said. "Well, you can tell whoever made that complaint that it's none of their damn business," I said coldly. The officers left shortly after, clearly realizing they had nothing to go on. But the encounter left me seething. Sarah was playing dirty, trying to drag me down with her. That same afternoon, my lawyer called. "James, we have a problem," he said, his voice tense. "What now?" I asked, already dreading the answer. "Sarah's filed a petition claiming financial abuse. She's alleging that you intentionally cut her off from joint accounts and left her without access to funds during the separation." I let out a bitter laugh. "She's really grasping at straws, isn't she?" "She's also claiming emotional distress," he added. "And she's asking for an emergency hearing to address temporary spousal support." "She cheated on me?" I snapped. "Why the hell does she think she's entitled to anything?" "Welcome to the wonderful world of divorce law," he said dryly. "Don't worry. We've got plenty of ammunition. But you'll need to stay sharp. This could get ugly." Ugly didn't even begin to describe it. The next few days were a whirlwind of legal maneuvers. My lawyer filed a response to Sarah's petition, laying out the facts of her infidelity in stark detail. I provided copies of text messages Linda had sent me, outlining Sarah's betrayal in her own daughter's words. But I didn't stop there. If Sarah wanted to play dirty, I was more than ready. First, I made sure the narrative was clear to everyone who mattered. I called friends, family members, even a few of our neighbors, explaining in calm, measured tones exactly what had happened. I didn't embellish or exaggerate. I simply laid out the truth. Sarah had betrayed me, and now she was trying to play the victim. The response was swift. Sarah's once solid support system began to crumble. People stopped taking her calls. Invitations dried up. The whispers started about her infidelity, about the choices she'd made, about how she destroyed her own marriage. Linda wasn't spared either. Her husband, Mike, had been growing increasingly distant since the truth came out. Now he was openly furious. "You helped your mother cheat on your father," he said during one of their arguments, loud enough that the neighbors could hear. "What kind of person does that? What does that say about your values? How am I supposed to trust you?" Linda tried to defend herself, but it was no use. The damage was done. As the weeks passed, Sarah's situation went from bad to worse. The emergency hearing didn't go in her favor. The judge wasn't impressed with her claims of financial abuse, especially after my lawyer presented evidence of her infidelity. Her petition for spousal support was denied, and the court ordered her to vacate the marital home immediately. She was left scrambling to find a place to stay, eventually ending up in a dingy one-bedroom apartment on the edge of town. Her reputation, once untouchable, was in tatters. The art community, where she had once been a rising star, began to distance themselves from her. The gallery, where she'd showcased her work, quietly removed her paintings from display. I heard through the grapevine that she'd tried to reach out to some of her old friends, hoping for a sympathetic ear. But most of them wanted nothing to do with her. "You made your bed," one of them reportedly told her. "Now you have to lie in it." Despite everything, Sarah still tried to contact me. She left voicemails, sent emails, even showed up at the house once, pounding on the door and begging to talk. I didn't answer. Instead, I finalized the sale of the house and made arrangements to leave town. The money from the sale, combined with my savings, was more than enough to start fresh. Before I left, I sent Sarah an email. "Sarah, 30 years of marriage. That's what you threw away. Not me. You chose this, and now you get to live with the consequences. I hope your one night was worth everything you lost. James." The day I left town was quieter than I expected. No drama, no last-minute pleas, just me, my truck, and a few suitcases holding the pieces of my new life. The house was sold, the paperwork signed, and the keys handed over to a young couple starting their own journey. I didn't feel sadness as I watched them walk through the front door. That house was a shell now, stripped of the memories that once made it a home. The real weight I carried was the last 30 years. I'd built a life with Sarah, shared dreams, and raised a daughter. I thought we were unshakable, but trust is fragile, and when it breaks, it can never truly be mended. For weeks after everything came crashing down, I replayed it all in my head, the laughs, the fights, the quiet moments in between. It was like trying to make sense of a puzzle with missing pieces. But the truth was simple. She made her choice, and it wasn't me. As I crossed the state line, a strange sense of calm settled over me. The anger and hurt were still there, but they didn't weigh me down like they used to. For the first time in years, I felt free. My new home was a small condo by the beach, thousands of miles away from the wreckage of my old life. The ocean stretched out before me, endless and full of possibilities. I spent my mornings walking along the shore, the waves washing away the bitterness one step at a time. I wasn't the same man I was before Sarah's betrayal. I was stronger, sharper, and more guarded. But I wasn't broken. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Life doesn't end when someone betrays you. It's just a new beginning, a chance to rebuild, to find out who you really are. And for the first time in a long time, I was ready to find out.